I want to speak about the transition process in just a moment, but we touched a little bit earlier on children who don't identify with a gender. At what age do children start to realize or start to feel something that they think might not be what the typical norm is?
I wouldn't be able to give you an exact date because all human beings, regardless of whether you are transgender or you are cisgendered, begin at a very infancy stage where you are still 3, 4, 5 years old, that you already know the kind of toys that you're comfortable playing with. You already understand which part of the gender line or the gender binary you fall on, as in who are you comfortable more to play with, who do you see and reflect yourself to look like when looking at the other children around you. So many trans people would then tell you that as early as 4 or 5 or 6, 7, they were already aware that I actually am different. I'm looking at these people that I'm told I look like them. Perhaps, let's say in the instance of somebody who was born male-bodied, being told that, no, you are male-bodied, you are a boy. And obviously children, like we said, schools are gendered in that way that often boys will be put on this side, girls will be put on that side. So those are some of the early indicators to a person who might be trans, that they would already have noticed that their comfort levels are on which side, looking at the spectrum of gender and the division that already exists. And as such, I would really be comfortable to say early childhood, most trans people would have noticed and picked up that they are really not comfortable with some of the things that they would have been told are supposed to be what they do, are supposed to be how they act, or they're supposed to express in that particular way.
But I mean, the same question applies if I could ask you, at what point did you know you are a girl? Right?
Yeah.
You probably won't know.
No.
Yeah. So the same thing then would happen to transgender people at the same time when maybe you started, I don't know, experimenting with your mother's high heels or whatever you were experimenting. So probably at the same age that they started noticing that I probably don't, I'm not as comfortable in this kind of role as other boys, or I'm not as comfortable as a girl in that role that was expected.
Now, in your experience, do parents have a hard time understanding what's going on for the child?
There is a lot of challenge that most parents of trans children go through, because you take it from a very early on age where a child is received onto this earth. You immediately are at hospital, and the very hospital cards that are supposed to register this little person that just arrived say male or female. End of story. The people who come into the delivery ward or into your room to check on you, or family who calls in to find out what is it, they will not necessarily say what is it. Is it a boy or is it a girl? There's never necessarily any room left for anything in between or anything different from that. So in obvious fact then, there is this programming that parents as well as the children undergo, that societally we have divided that there are just two groups of people. There are boys, there are girls. The boys will grow to become men, the girls will grow to become what? Women. So in essence, when now parents of trans kids begin to realize or begin to see all of this kind of transgression of this kind of rule that has been set for them, it becomes obviously a very difficult and frustrating period and experience, because you are at friction with what is dictated as the norm, which is where we call what we say normal, because it comes from what we know, what we see, what is regular, what happens on a day-to-day basis, what is common, that on the neighbors' houses there's only what boys and girls, men and women. So in your house, obviously, if it then comes to a point where it seems as if you might have something that does not exist anywhere else, it then becomes a discordance between you and the world that you live in. Then in an African sense, you begin to be questioned whether you are a witch, whether you are somehow bewitched even as a family, whether you've been cursed. All these other complexities come into play of trying to explain why this thing is happening to you, where you now have a child who does not belong to the categories that have been set by society. Whereas this is actually, I will go on and use that very word they use, it's a normal occurrence. The only problem is that we've never necessarily discussed it enough and talk about it so as to normalize it, because anything that has been normal is what we allow ourselves to sort of incorporate into daily living. So I would say it's the most hardest experience for trans parents because there isn't enough readily available resources to parents. There isn't readily available information about what it means to be transgender. How do you raise a transgender kid? And if you are to raise a transgender child, how does the system around you and the structure of schools, of churches, playgrounds, everywhere else where we go in society, how is it structured? Is it in a way that it will be able to embrace this difference with your child? Will it be able to embrace that difference? Will it be able to accept that particular difference? Of which the experience is often the latter, where if then there is that occurrence of a trans child in a family, a lot of all these negativities that are accorded the reasons to that happening are compounded on the parent, such that it becomes a very difficult experience to understand where do I go to be able to live and understand this particular situation, which is where, as Gender Dynamics, we come in and other organizations in the country that work on trans issues to say there are readily available resources that we can be able to help you adjust, not to change the child, not to cure them, for there's nothing wrong with them, but to be able to help the whole environment around the child be able to embrace them and enabling for them to grow as a fully fleshed human being who understands that yes, I'm different to other children, but there's still nothing wrong with me.
I think the issue of transgenderism or the issue of being transgender, it doesn't affect only the person concerned. It affects everyone associated with the person. You know, I can think of people who used to call Caitlin Uncle Bruce. Maybe other people were calling, I don't know, brother-in-law, which maybe people live in the sports, whatever. So everybody, because we relate in a gendered way, you know, so all of a sudden now, she is Auntie Caitlin, you know. So you need to shift and adjust your mind, and you need to relate with her as a woman, you know. So I can even imagine in families, in African context, sometimes, you know, people have responsibilities in some families based on your gender, maybe because you are a first son. This is what is expected of you. Now, when you saying, in actual fact, I'm not a son, then the whole family need to sit down and decide what do they do with, I'm thinking in the Xhosa culture where the first son is responsible to slaughter in every, I don't know, family event or ritual. Now, me saying I'm not a son, I'm a daughter, now the family need to find a replacement, or this responsibility, who will it be given to, and stuff like that. So my point here is that being transgender does not only affect the person involved, it affects everyone attached to the person.
Absolutely.